All right, today we're covering the history of West Africa. Who can start reading?
Me.
Okay, go ahead.
Early civilization in West Africa learned to thrive in a variety of climates and landscapes, from the Sahara to the tropical rainforest throughout its history. The region was open to many migrations and invasions because of its resources.
All right, so we're going to start with the first part, Africans as ancient herders.
I miss. I only have the Zoom is only loading. Sorry for being late.
Okay, يلا continue يا أحمد. Uta, continue.
Hot. We think of the Sahara as a hot, intensely dry place where a few living things can survive. 10,000 years ago, the Sahara was a much different place. Rock drawing from 8000 BC, despite a world that looks more like a savanna than a desert. Drawing includes lakes, forests, and large animals not seen in the Sahara in modern times. Ostrich, giraffes, elephants, antelope, and rhinoceros. Uh, Semi-nomadic people herded cattle and hunted wild animals. As the climate grew drier, fewer species of plants and animals survived the harsh environment. Many people moved south, following the retreat of the grasslands and the rain. During this period of desertification, people discovered that camels can survive without water for longer periods than cattle, sheep, or goats. Camel also can carry heavy loads for long distance. They were perfect domesticated animals for desert dwellers.
All right, so he was talking about the life of ancient herders at the beginning. We set two main points at this part. The first part, or the first point, that the climate have shaped the kind of life they were living. It was a very dry place. Few living things can survive the dry place. And actually, they also had like a Sahara desert or like a savanna. It has many animals, and people were semi nomadic. They herded cattle and hunted wild animals. But what happened to the climate? It became more dry. So people moved south in order to have the retreat of the grassland and the rain. يبقى why did people move to the south? Because they will have the retreat of the grassland and the rain. But a very serious problem have happened to people there, which is desertification. But during the desertification, they discovered the importance of camels as animals which can survive this dry climate. Okay, let's move to the movement of people. Laura,
Yes, Miss.
read.
Okay. Miss, should I read from the textbook or practice book?
No, text.
Okay. The Bantu people inhabited West Africa in ancient times. They had developed farming as early as 2000 BC. A vast migration of Bantu people out of West Africa began around 1000 BC and continued for hundreds of years. Their their farming practices allowed them to expand rather easily into areas occupied by hunter-gatherer groups. The Bantu became the dominant population in most of East and South Africa. The Bantu might have reached the East African coast as early as the AD 200s. And they displaced many of the people who had lived on these lands before them. Wherever the Bantu moved, they spread their culture, including three vital elements. First, the Bantu cultivated bananas, taro, and yams, which were originally from Malaysia. These crops thrived in the humidity of the tropical rainforest. Second, the Bantu spread their languages everywhere they settled. Today, more than 500 distinct Bantu languages are spoken by 85 million Africans. Third, the Bantu brought iron smelting technology. They could create tools and weapons unlike any the native people had ever seen.
All right, so the movement of people actually was summarized in the Bantu people. The Bantu people are the main people that inhabited West Africa. This is number one. Number two, they developed farming. But actually, the migration of Bantu people out of the West began around the year 1000. Their farming practices allowed them to expand. That's why they moved. And they were expanding easily to the areas that were occupied by the hunter and the gatherer groups. But they became the dominant occupation. Why? Because they were the only people who can farm. So they displaced many of the people who had lived on these lands before them. So the Bantu people became the most important group that have lived in West Africa. Okay, this is number one. Now, what are the main aspects of their cultures? There were three aspects or three elements. Number one, they cultivated bananas, taro, and yams, which came from Malaysia. Number two, they spread their languages everywhere, which they had more than 500 languages. Okay. Number three, they brought iron smelting, which is called the smelting. We've studied this before in Western Europe to make tools and weapons. All right. Hannah Hani, let's talk about trade across Sahara.
Okay, miss. For thousands of years, the Sahara was barrier to contact between West Africa and North Africa. By the AD 700s, Arab Muslims had crossed the Sahara and conquered most of North Africa. They dominated the southern Mediterranean and controlled trade in that region, as well as Saharan trade routes in West Africa. Arab, Arab geographers slowly learned about Africa south of the Sahara. They realized that the region offered opportunities not only in trade, but also in adding converts to Islam. One of the West African kingdoms they learned about was Ghana. Ghana controlled the gold trade in the region. It used gold for salt that Arab traders brought in from the Sahara. Salt was a very important trade good. It was the best preserver of food, and it was rare and difficult to acquire. The Berber people had lived in North Africa long before the Arabs arrived. The Berbers resisted Islam for a while, but in time they converted several groups of Islamic Berbers joined together to become the Almoravids. They were fierce fighters and they wanted to spread their new faith.
All right. So after being hunters and gatherers, then moving to farming with the Bantu people, it was a time for trade in the Sahara. What happened? The Sahara طبعا was a natural barrier between West Africa and North Africa because it's very big and dry and people cannot survive easily there. And in order to Arab Muslims crossed the Sahara to conquer North Africa, and he also dominated the southern Mediterranean. After controlling the Mediterranean Sea, they were able to control the trade as well. بس طبعا Saharan trade routes into West Africa, Arab geographers slowly learned about Africa and south of Sahara, and they realized the region offered opportunities not only in trade, but also in adding converts to Islam. So they used the trade as a way to convert people to Islam. For example, Ghana, Ghana controlled the gold trade. It traded gold for salt. It was very important trade at this time. They were trading the gold for salt because salt was important and they didn't have salt with Arabs. And Arab trades brought it from Sahara's salt was very important trade and good, but the best preserver of food. Yani they had gold, but they couldn't keep food without having salt. So they needed to keep it. So they traded it with, as I told you before, with gold. While trading, what happened? They take the idea, or sorry, they take the way in order to convert people to Islam. It was very important, and to spread their new faith. Okay, the first trading kingdom. Who can read? Hana Yasser.
The Ghana Empire was a powerful kingdom in West Africa during the Middle Ages. It had grown wealthy from its control of the gold trade. As the empire grew wealthy, it conquered many of its neighbors, including gold-rich lands to the south. Ghana built a strong trade with Muslim countries in North Africa. In the AD 100s, the Almoravids conquered Ghana. Almoravid rule over Ghana lasted only a few years, but that was only enough to damage the trade that kept the empire alive. With the arrival of so many Almoravids, there was now a larger population to feed. The dry climate could not support the sudden increase in agriculture, and this resulted in desertification. Land that at one time was fertile became desert. Ghana became weak, and its conquered neighbors began to break away.
All right. So as I told you before, Ghana was the first trading kingdom because they were trading gold with salt. They needed salt in order to preserve food, but didn't last long because after building a very strong trade with Muslim countries in North Africa, came the Almoravids, and the Almoravids conquered Ghana, and rule over Ghana lasted only a few years, but it was long enough to damage the trading kingdom. And now the population became very big, and they wanted to feed them. But actually, agriculture in the area wasn't enough in order to feed these all of these people. So Ghana became very weak and was conquered. Neighbors began to break away. يبقى here the question, why did the Ghana Empire collapse? It collapsed after the Almora Vets conquered Ghana, and they have destroyed and damaged their trading empire. This is the situation for Ghana. Who can complete reading? Adam Sadat.
Yes, Miss Sani.
يلا Adam حبيبي read.
From several West African kingdoms, right?
Yes.
Several West African kingdoms sought to take control of the trade the falling Ghana Empire had established in the region. Islam was taking hold in northern West Africa, and the most powerful of the new trading kingdoms were Muslim, Mali and Songhai. Mali. The trading kingdom of Mali came after Ghana. Mali grew rich from the gold for salt trade. Its rulers conquered neighboring lands and built an empire. The empire of Mali reached its height under the emperor Mansa Musa. The city of Timbuktu, which was already an important trading post, became a center for Islamic culture. Mansa Musa went on a historic pilgrimage to Mecca. By the time Mansa Musa returned home, the Islamic world knew there was a new and powerful Islamic kingdom south of the Sahara.
So the second kingdom today will be Mali. Mali is a trading company of Mali that came after Ghana. So the first one was Ghana, the second one was Mali. Mali also grew rich from the gold for salt trade. And also its ruler started to conquer neighboring lands and build an empire. After building an empire and reach its height, it reached actually its height under the emperor was called Mansa Musa. The Mansa Musa have established the city of Timbuktu, which was very important trading post and also very important Islamic center. But Mansa Musa went in a historic pilgrimage to Mecca, and after he returned back, many people realized that it was a very important kingdom was under the Islamic power by the ruler of Mansa Musa. Who can complete Songhai? Okay, Uta. آه ماشي دبلينا.
Okay, miss. Um, Songhai, after Mansa Musa's death, Songhai replaced Mali as the most powerful West African empire. A well-trained army and a navy that patrolled the Niger River made Songhai the largest of the three trading empires. Songhai now controlled the region's trade routes, had salt mines in the Sahara, and sought to turn their empire into the center for Islamic learning. The Songhai Empire eventually fell to the Moroccans, who seized the salt mines and destroyed the empire by the end of the 1500s.
Thank you يا دبلينا.
Miss, do I
Actually,
continue?
no, thank you very much. After Mali and I'm sorry, after Mali came Songhai and Ghana, sorry, came the Songhai. And the Songhai was another powerful country, sorry, another powerful empire which replaced Mali. And they also had, which is different from them, that they had well-trained army and a navy patrolled the Niger River, which made Songhai the largest of three trading empires. So here we're going to be comparing between Ghana, Mani, and Songhai because these are the three powerful kingdoms or empires. They controlled also the trade routes and they had salt mines, which were eventually fell by the Moroccans. Okay, Ritesh, complete the coastal kingdoms.
Okay. Coastal Kingdom. Slavery had been practiced in Africa for centuries. Muslims from North Africa and Asia had been buying enslaved people from south of the Sahara. As European colonists established colonies in the Western Hemisphere, they purchased enslaved people to do their labor. Small African kingdoms along the Atlantic coast became trading partners with Portugal, Spain, and Great Britain. Trade in enslaved persons became highly profitable in these kingdoms. When Europeans outlawed the slave trade, the kingdom's economies began to fail.
So the coastal kingdoms were depending on the slavery, which has been practiced in Africa for centuries. Why Muslims from North Africa and Asia had buying enslaved people from the south of Sahara. Also, European colonists were establishing colonies and they needed people who work or small labor to work in their kingdoms. So they have brought African from Sahara in order to work for them. Countries such as Portugal, Spain, Great Britain, all have trade in enslaved persons, but it will all collapse after the European outlawed the slave trade. So it all failed to complete. Now let's talk about the European domination. We have the European domination, and then we will have the new countries. Okay, let's talk about the European domination today. Sorry. Who can read about the European domination? Okay. Laura,
Yes.
read.
Okay, 1 minute. In the late 80s, several European countries were eager to expand into Africa with its many natural resources. After hundreds of years of self-rule, West Africans lost control of their lands to the Europeans. That's it?
Yeah, complete change. The most important part is changing trade.
Okay. The British government outlawed slave trade in 1807. Great Britain tried but could not keep other European countries from continuing to export slaves. The British founded the colony of Freetown in Sierra Leone in 1787 as a safe haven for runaway or freed enslaved persons. The Americans followed suit in 1822, founding Liberia as a home for freed American slaves. The British encouraged development development of the palm oil trade to make up the loss of revenue from the slave trade. British traders and missionaries familiarized themselves with the trading culture of the Niger River, and the British started to profit from the growing role to West African trade. Before long, France took notice.
All right.
Done.
So again, after the British outlawed the slave trade, they wanted another source of living. So they have the other European countries from Britain and other countries. They wanted to found a colony of Freetown in Sierra Leone as a safe haven for runaway or freed enslaved persons. So in order to free the enslaved persons. And they have developed the palm oil trade in order to make up for the loss of the slave trade. Actually, after that, the British trade and the missionaries familiarized themselves with the trade culture and the Niger River, and the British started to profit from their growing rule in West Africa instead of taking the slave trade as their source of income. How did they start to create colonies?
Miss, can you please re-explain the European domination?
Again,
Yes, please.
okay. We said that their main trade was slave trade. So after European outlawed the slave trade, they wanted to have another source of income. The British government outlawed the slave trade, but Great Britain tried not to keep with other European countries from continuing to export slaves. So the British founded the colony of Freetown in Sierra Leone as a safe haven for runaway or for to free enslaved persons. So they have founded this place in order to free enslaved persons. طب in order بقى to shift, they needed to shift from slave trade to another to something else to depend on for their income. So they have managed to familiarize themselves with the trading culture of the Niger River and started to profit from growing role in West Africa. Before long, France take notice. So they started to familiarize with themselves with the trading culture of the Niger River. Okay, Uta?
Thanks, Miss.
What about by creating colonies? Hannah Hani?
Yes, miss. Before the mid-18th, the British and French posted military in North America, and the British and Dutch had settled in South Africa. In 1869, two events increased Europe's interest in Africa. First, the Suez Canal, an artificial waterway connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, opened. Second, diamonds were discovered in South Africa.
All right, so British and French posted military in North Africa. So they have make posts as a military posts. And you increased Europe's, okay, they increased Europe interest in Africa. First, in Suez Canal as an artificial waterway connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, and open second diamonds were discovered in South Africa. So they used the Suez Canal, and number two, they used the trade of diamonds. Complete, Johanna? 1 minute, please.
Before that time, Europeans had been in contact with the coastal kingdoms, but few had ventured into the interior of West Africa. This began to change as Great Britain, France, Portugal, Belgium, and the new unified country of Germany began planning to carve out empires in Africa. Europeans followed a policy of imperialism, or seizing political control of other places to create an empire. At the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, the European power established rules for partitioning Africa. The French and British claimed the most territory in West Africa. The modern countries of Benin, Burkina Faso, Chad, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, and Senegal were French colonies. Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and St. Helena were British colonies. Togo started out as a German possession, but Germany lost in World War I. Some colonies were ruled more harshly than others, but one thing was true about all of them. Europeans made the important decision about how Africans lived. Settlers from Europe could set up farms on the most fertile land, even if Africans were forced off that land. Africans resisted, sometimes violently.
So, what was the purpose of the Berlin Conference? We said that Europeans had been in contact with coastal kingdoms, but few had ventured into the interior of West Africa. يبقى number one, they had contact with the African. But actually, this is began to change after Great Britain and France, Portugal, Belgium have set the unified country of Germany. When they have made the country of Germany, they began to planning to carve out empires in Africa. They want Africa was like a cake and they wanted to divide it among them. So Europeans followed a policy called imperialism. What does it mean imperialism? Seizing political control of other places to create an empire. So they wanted to have parts of Africa, each country will have a part of Africa in order to create their own empire. This happened in the Berlin Conference. The European powers established rules for prioritizing Africa. The French and the British claimed most of the territory in West. The modern countries of Benin, Burkina Faso, Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Mali, and Mauritania, Niger, and Senegal were French colonies. Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and St. Helena were British colonies. Togo started out as a German possession, but Germany lost it in World War I. So imperialism means to seize political control over some places to create an empire. And all these great countries wanted in the Berlin Conference to divide Africa among them to create an empire in Africa. What did they do when they ruled? The colonists ruled very harshly and they made decisions about how Africa lived. And they set up farms on the most fertile land, even if they were forcing Africans to leave their land. So they were very violent. Okay, I will stop at this part and I will continue the lesson after Eid, inshallah. Anyone has any question, please reread this part. And if you have any questions, you can send it to me or ask me at the School of Your Physical Students after Eid, inshallah. All right, anyone has any question?
No, Miss, thank you.
You're welcome. Happy Eid,
Oh,
guys.
thank you.
Happy Eid for you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you inshallah after Eid. Yalla, bye.
Bye.